Welcome back. We're live on Channel 5 with Ava and Carol. Later, we're asking if the new Rwanda laws should be tougher. But let's talk about Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey now. Should he resign for failing victims of the post office scandal? We'd love your calls. Now, Sir Ed was the postal minister between 2010 and 2012, when Horizon software issues started coming to light and a number of high-profile prosecutions had taken place. He then refused to meet Alan Bates, who led the charge to exonerate the sub-postmasters. He said it would not serve any purpose, which Bates called offensive. Sir Ed has said he regrets not being able to help postmasters, and this is his response to the scandal.
Well, I wish I knew then what I know now, what we all know now, that this was a conspiracy on a huge scale, with the post office lying to the victims, to judges, to ministers of all political parties over decades. This is quite a national scandal, and I think at the front of our minds should be those people, those sub-postmasters who've had their lives ruined, and we need to make sure they get justice, that the convictions are overturned and they're properly compensated.
The Conservative peer Lord Finkelstein, Tory Deputy Chair Lee Anderson, and also victims of the scandal are among those saying that's not good enough, Ed Davey, you need to quit. Joe Hamilton, whose story was told in the ITV drama Mr Bates versus the Post Office, said of Sir Ed, he always calls for other people's resignations. Now it's time for him to look in the mirror. And actually it's true. So people have started to look at Ed Davey calling for other people to resign. So he's a guy, he's popped up a lot in Lib Dem politics. He was a minister under the coalition government, and quite often he called for people to resign. He made a bit of a habit. He'd put his thumb up and then he'd say, resign, right? And so we're used to, there he is at Buckingham Palace, getting his sir, he's got a knighthood, resign. There he is, resign. He's over here. And every time you see him, he's calling for someone to resign. In fact, I can actually show you some of the examples. Oh, well, there we are. That's him saying, are you my driver? I think you should resign. So everyone, that's our little joke. I'll show you some examples. Boris Johnson, 16 times, sometimes twice a day, called for Boris Johnson to go. Maybe that's not exceptional. Chris Grayling, who was not a very good transport secretary, he'd called to resign for the cost of ferry contracts. Mark Field, Tory MP, Dominic Cummings, Robert Jenrick, all Conservatives, resign, resign, resign. Alok Sharma, who's the guy who ran the COP26 on Britain's behalf, resigned because of a coal mine. Cressida Dick, head of the Met, resign. Matt Hancock, obvious reasons, resign. Rishi Sunak, of course, he wants him to resign. Priti Patel, Ed Davey says, you've got to resign. He then called for every Conservative MP to resign. Kwasi Kwarteng, ex-Chancellor, resign. Richard Sharp, head of the BBC, resign. Oh, and the Thames Water Board as directors for being a slow-moving car crash. And you may say, well, fair enough, there was a hell of a lot of sewage in that last one there. But there's so many calls by Ed Davey for people to resign. And now, does he not resign himself? Joining us is the Liberal Democrat Cabinet spokesperson, Christine Jardine MP. Well, the cats have come home to roost here, haven't they?
Well, I think you said yourself there that Ed had called for Boris Johnson to resign 16 times. Now, I think if you ask most people in this country if Boris Johnson should have resigned, you will find that a lot of them would have said it an awful lot more often than 16 times. And, various people, you said there, he called for them to resign. And you said yourself, with reason. Now, we're in a situation where there are hundreds of people in this country who have been to hell and back for the past 20 years. And our focus now should be on making sure that they get the compensation that they deserve, that they get the justice that they've been denied. And Ed has said that he wishes, you showed it yourself, that he wishes he had known then what he knows now, what we all know now. But the Post Office lied.
He knew
to
back
so
in
many
2010.
people.
He knew in 2010 he'd been told by Alan Bates. He also knew about the trials of this IT Horizon scheme in Newcastle in the mid-90s.
So if he knew...
Well, hang on a second, Ed. Hang on a second. Ed Davey is the first minister, as far as we know, he's the first minister on record to have met Alan Bates. And Alan Bates has said that he does not think that Ed Davey was responsible.
Hello,
Lord
you're
Arbuthnot
rewriting
has
history.
said that
Hang on,
this
Carol.
focus-
Wait a sec, Carol.
If I could just finish, this focus on Ed Davey, to me and to a lot of people, is distracting from what we should all be concerned about, which is the people who've had their lives destroyed by the post office's lies. And I think that's terrible.
No, well, stop deflecting. The issue is this. You've got a guy who leads your party who theoretically wants to become Prime Minister. How does he do when he has a job? He had one job as the Post Office Minister, and that's to spot this scandal. And he couldn't be bothered, could he?
He was the first minister. There had been a number of Labour ministers before him. There had been 7 years of this. And
Alan
Ed Davey
Bates
was the
went
first
to him.
person.
Alan Bates went to him and he told him basically to shove off. He basically said to him, there is no purpose in meeting you or any of the other
let Christine answer.
But he did. But
later.
Thank you very much,
Much
Jeremy.
later.
There had been 7 years of this, of Alan Bates trying to raise this case, of other people trying to raise this case. And Ed did meet Alan Bates.
Yeah.
He's the first minister on record as having met Alan Bates. Alan Bates has said it's not Ed's fault. The problem is that Ed, like so many other people, was lied to. The victims were lied to and lied about.
All right. Maybe it's okay. All right. It's just that we don't.
That's what we need to focus on, getting them what they need.
We don't, with Liberal Democrats, we don't always have sight of how they do when they're in office. With Ed Davey, we do, because of the coalition government. And it's like the hashtag on Twitter, you had one job. So stay with us, Christine. Emily in London, what do you think? Maybe Ed Davey is just one of a number of people who fell down on the job.
I think he's going to eventually resign, but I mean, currently, and I mean, you know, that lady you were just talking to is going to defend him, but it's nonsense. It's indefensible. I mean, he did know. And to quote, you know, I know it was scripted, but we're just skint little people. He wasn't interested. He should be saying who misled him and how. Why didn't he probe? If he was so satisfied with what he was told, why didn't he ask questions? He was the minister. Why didn't he He should be releasing records of who told him what. There's got to be both from his memory, and I'm assuming there's emails and documents that went back and forward. It's absolutely crazy.
Go on, Christine, answer that.
Well, the letter, I haven't seen the letter's been published, it's been on Twitter, but Ed did meet with Alan Bates, and Alan Bates has said that Ed is not the person.
When did he meet him?
He was minister for 19 months in what is a 20-year disgrace. Minister after minister after minister were lied to by the post office.
All right.
The victims were lied to by the post office. The victims were lied about. People went to jail, lost their lives.
Christine, hang on, Carol.
That's what we should be
Christine,
looking at.
you're heading towards
terrible.
a general election, and you've got a leader who's going to have to spend half his interviews talking about the post office. You can't do that as the Liberal Democrats, can you? You're going to have to find a new leader.
Well, I mean, I've been out knocking doors and talking to people, and we all feel for the people. The thing at the forefront of everyone's mind is what these sub-postmasters and their families have been through. I was listening to Richard before I came on here. It's a disgrace. Ed is someone who's known great tragedy in his life, and any of us who have just feel so much for them. And yes, the electorate feels for them. We all do. But when I talk to people in my constituency, they are angry at what happened to people in Horizon. They want to know why the post office lied, why the post office put people through this torture, why Fujitsu hasn't done anything.
Go on, Ava. Christine, hang on. Let Ava speak.
I think you two are being a little bit unfair. I think by pinning this all on Ed Davey, there are a succession of ministers. Hang on, let me just make this point. A succession of ministers who made mistakes and ignored it. Now, the big person I'm worried about who ignored it was Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak is the only person who was in charge, who kept awarding contracts to Fujitsu from 2019 onwards, when this scandal had already been blown open. He already knew that there was a big problem.
Maybe that's coming his way.
He already knew that Fujitsu had lied to the post office, and he gave them billions of pounds worth of more contracts.
Carol, please wait. We need to go to our break. We'll come back. So Ava and Carol are with us, and so is Lib Dem Cabinet Shadow Minister Christine Jardine as well, answering questions. Bravely, we have to say, stepping into the breach on your leader's behalf here. Later on, we'll ask if the Rwanda bill needs to be tougher. More calls now. Is it unfair to say Ed Davey should resign because he was postal minister? And by the way, the first mention of this in the press was in a brilliant magazine called Computer Weekly. There it is, and that was 1999, so that's a year before Ed Davey got his job. Sorry, 2009. So a year before the coalition government. So that was the moment the balloon went up. Let's see, who have we got on the lines now? Anyone on the phones? Siobhan in Bournemouth, hi.
Hello.
Is this unfair on Ed Davey or what?
Well, it's like deputy head shall roll. The person in charge of the post office, the prosecutors, who gives them their little cards that say they can authorise, they are authorised to prosecute, is the Secretary of State, who currently is Kenny Badenoch, who's not said very much. I'd also like to find out who gave them a contract after they sued the NHS for being sacked for a non-working IT
You're talking about Fujitsu's a whole other story. We may end up...
And the guy who runs, the chairman of Fujitsu, has a CBE.
I know.
So,
listen, all I'm saying is today...
It's a point of it.
You're right.
I'm not a Liberal Democrat. I'm a Labour Party. But I think the Tories, they've taken £400,000 from the chairman of Fujitsu, and all the blame's going on to Ed Davey.
Oh, that's interesting, Carol. That's a bad line, isn't it? If they've taken money from the Fujitsu chairman for the Tory party,
Carol. But can I add on to that as well? It's even worse than that, because it's also the Japan trade agreement that was signed off by Liz Truss in 2020 was dependent as well on new Fujitsu contracts. That was part of the discussions.
I get all of that, but you know, Ed Davey, no one's blaming Ed Davey solely for this. You know, if Siobhan had been watching before, we were having a go at Paula Venables, who should take responsibility. So should the Fujitsu boss, but Ed Davey had a role to play.
Yeah, but we're talking about Conservatives taking money from Fujitsu and then defending them.
Yes, I get all of that. That is a different story. Our debate today is talking about Davey, and the bottom line is, if he had listened to Alan Bates' concerns when Alan Bates was first trying to express those
Christine will say he did meet Alan Bates. He met him in
he did not meet Alan Bates at that time, and you're refusing to say when
October 2010.
When he met him?
October 2010.
Why did Alan Bates write back to him and say, I find your refusal to meet me offensive? Why did he say that?
Well, then Ed did meet him, and Ed has said that he wishes he'd known then what he knows now, that the post office lied to him.
If he met him,
he did meet him. And
Christine, I'm asking you a question. If he met him, why didn't he address?
Don't just talk across each other.
Christine,
sorry,
you've had
Carol,
a big
hang on. We're never going to. This is too complicated. He met him. Bates wanted to meet him again and again, and Ed Davey in the end decided he's not going to meet this guy anymore. He can't help him, and Christine obviously feels he did whatever he had to do at the time.
He did not. That's the point.
No, okay, and you feel he didn't.
Not.
Fine. Kathleen in the West Midlands, hi.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Good morning,
We're all
Christine.
crossing here. We're all crossing here, Kathleen. It's such a bad story.
Yes, it is a very bad story. First of all, to get to be a minister, you have to know, and all ministers know a certain amount that they don't tell the public. Right, now, Ed Davey, as Minister of the Post Office, should have known or did know. I believe he did know. But not only that, but because of his action and the actions of other ministers, those people who killed themselves would be alive today.
I know.
So the Post Office has got a lot to answer for. But yes, to be a minister, I don't care what they say, to be a minister of any government, you have to know very well what is going on. You don't get to be a minister without knowing what's going on.
I hear you. So you think he would have been aware of...
He would have been aware.
The Computer Weekly magazine piece, for example.
Yes, he would have been certainly aware. He wanted to talk to Alan Bates. Now, he knew. Why didn't he... He met Alan Bates once, I believe. Is that right?
Well, then, it may have been once or twice, and then he stopped agreeing to see him.
Now, if he was really interested in what Alan had to say to him, he would have listened.
Well, he says he was lied to, Kathleen. That's his defence. The Post Office lied to him.
No,
you don't believe it?
Post office. No, he would have had a very good idea. You don't get to be a minister, and you don't get to be members of Parliament. You know more than you're letting.
I'd love to think that was true. Thank you, Kathleen.
Who was he
Graham
saying lied to him? Alan Bates didn't lie to him.
No, you think? Well, Christine, who lied to? Who lied to Ed? Christine.
Ed has been absolutely clear that he did not know, and when he met Alan Bates in October 20, and Alan Bates has said that Ed Davey is not the person who is to blame for this. We shouldn't be focusing on Ed. And Lord Arbuthnot has described blaming Ed Davey for it as a red herring. What we need to keep at the forefront of our minds, and all of the correspondence and everything that was said will come out in the public inquiry, which is why it's so important. But what we need to keep at the front of our minds is the people who were lied to and were lied about. Those victims who were put through hell by the post office and Fujitsu. And I don't think it's good enough for Karen to say that's a different story.
It's
not. It's the same.
We have to pause. We have to pause.
Issue.
Christine, thank you.
They are the people at the heart of it.
OK, Christine, thank you. Christine Jardine, Lib Dem Cabinet Office spokesperson. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome back. Ava and Carol with us. We've got so many calls coming in on the post office. And now this thing, OK, Venables is in trouble. She ran the post office. She's given up her CBE. Maybe some people will come for a pension and a house and whatnot. But Ed Davey's about to go into the breach as a election party leader in an election. Graham, hello.
Hello, good morning, Jeremy.
What do you think? Is it unfair to say Ed Davey needs to step down?
Can I ask you one question first?
What, is it relevant?
Who was the post office minister when this all started?
Who was the post office minister in 1999?
Well, when it all become...
Peter Mandelson.
What I'm trying to say, Jeremy, he was the post office minister for a while, and he should take the can. However, the CEO of the post office should have everything taken over. I can't believe how thick these people are. How can hundreds of people be caught on the fiddle? Impossible.
Yeah, well, I know. Do you know, I talked to somebody yesterday. The only business they had was selling stamps from their front room. That was their... And they suddenly get an £11,000 deficit come up on horizon. There's no way they're doing that business in a year. You know.
No. Exactly, Jeremy.
Yeah.
They close their eyes to it. And for that Mrs. Jardine, if she is a Mrs., to be on defending the Liberal Democrat leader is absolutely disgraceful.
Well, we just said that's
MPs looking after MPs.
Yeah, well, it's you know, you've got a little bit of respect for her for coming in to bat on a very, very sticky wicket today. You're in Plymouth, so you'll have a big Lib Dem challenge down there, Graham. Will you vote for them after this?
I'm not voting for anybody anymore. I'm 72. They're all a bunch of liars.
OK, Graham, thank you so much. Raj in Flintshire, hi.
Hi.
So, Ed Davey, what about it?
He should resign, as far as I'm concerned, because I used to own a company and I was a director.
Yeah.
And if by any of my staff would done anything wrong, I was held responsible. He was responsible. And that lady as well, that Paula, she should give her CBE back, and she should pay the money back as well as everything else.
Well,
and these people... You know,
this doesn't happen very often. We had a situation in the banking crisis, one of the most visible, I won't say criminals, but wrongdoers, was the guy who ran RBS. And his name was, remind me, and he had a pension of something like $700,000 a year. And he cut it in half, but he's still drawing $350,000 a year. Fred Goodwin.
But you see, isn't this the anger? So, like, during the financial crash, no one went to prison. Grenfell, no one goes to prison. And we're looking at this situation now. No one's going to go to prison. The only people who suffered is the little guys.
No, I know, but I mean, but you're defending Ed Davey, right?
I'm not defending Ed Davey. I'm offering you another perspective. Do I think that it was abominable that he did not meet with Alan Bates? Yes, I do. But I also think it was abominable that Pat McFadden didn't and Peter Mandelson didn't. And the Tory government is still working with the company that caused all of this crisis in the US.
We'll see. think we'll see someone's got to... You know, at the moment, the taxpayer is going to have to pay all the compensation for this.
Yes, I know. And you know, Ed is right on all of this, but the person we're looking at specifically today, all those people will get their comeuppance in the end.
Is Ed Davey.
But Davey had one job as Post Office Minister. You know, when you take a ministerial post, you have a brief. You look back on what's been happening in previous years. And, you know, Davey has made his name. He's always boasting about the fact that he stands up for the working man, that he stands up for the man and the woman with no power. Well, he had his chance to do that.
We've got someone on the line who used to work with Ed Davey, Sharon?
Yeah.
Sharon in Brighton. All right. Well, do you think there's a defence here for him? I mean, people say he's a nice guy, for example.
Ed is a very good constituency MP. He always has been. But there is a lot of information that he's not been completely honest about. And I think he needs to be a lot more honest and show a lot more contrition. He was boasting to constituents about having appointed Paula Venables and about having her personal number because he'd appointed her and he could get her to intervene in the reduction of hours at a local post office. So he's clearly quite close to her.
I didn't know that he was boasting about having appointed Paula Venables. That is a shocker. That's Dracula in charge of the blood bank territory. There he is. So Nick Clegg on the left. That's the coalition coming together. 2010, new government. In he goes to the post office, and now he's been hit. This is what politics does, right? Here we are, 13 years on, and he's been hit by an absolute torrent of sewage.
He's a weasel, though. He's trying to blame other people for what was actually his job. Yes, there are other people to blame, but he had a role to play.
And also, he's the only one who's a party leader now. That's the key thing.